It seems like forever, right? Humans have been obsessed with living longer, like way longer.
And not just like adding years, but really making those years count, like really living them.
Yeah, thriving. And like every day, there's a new headline, a new study. It feels like science is getting closer and closer actually figuring this whole aging thing out.
I mean, in a way it is. There's so much we're learning constantly.
So speaking of learning, that's what we're doing today, diving into one of those headlines, one of those potential keys to a longer, healthier life, the Klotho gene.
The Klotho gene.
Yeah, so for folks tuning in, you probably know we're not talking about some like mythical fountain of youth here. This is real, a gene, a part of our DNA, and it seems to be incredibly important not just for how long we live, but how well our brains work, how our bodies age at like the cellular level.
It's actually a protein. It's a protein this gene makes, Klotho. And it does a ton of stuff. Like, it's kind of mind-blowing how much it influences.
Yeah, like the research suggests it's involved in regulating aging itself, protecting our cells from damage, and keeping our metabolism running smoothly.
It's like it's a master conductor almost, making sure all these different systems in our bodies are working together in harmony.
Which brings us to the reason we're talking about it today, a new study just out this past March by Josh Conway. He was looking at using gene therapy to increase Klotho levels in mice, and, well, the findings are really interesting.
Oh, yeah. Super interesting. I think, for anyone who follows this stuff, it's both exciting and a little bit, well, there are definitely some caveats to consider.
Okay, so that's what we're going to unpack today, the whole Klotho story. What is it exactly? Why are scientists so fascinated by it? What did this new gene therapy study find? And really importantly, what does it all mean? Like, what are the next steps?
Right, because it's one thing to see these promising results in mice, but what about humans? What's the reality there?
Exactly. So let's start with the basics. What is Klotho like in simple terms?
Okay, so Klotho is a protein primarily produced in the kidneys and in certain parts of the brain too.
Mm.
And it's kind of like, imagine your cells have this intricate instruction manual, and Klotho is making sure everyone's reading it correctly, that things are running smoothly, and that cells are staying healthy.
It's like the quality control manager for our cells.
Yeah, very good analogy.
Yeah.
And, it's involved in a bunch of things, like we said, but some of the key ones are regulating aging, protecting against that damage that happens to our cells over time, and keeping our metabolism humming along.
So you mentioned Klotho being produced in the brain. What about its impact on brain health and cognitive function? What have scientists learned about that connection?
Yeah, so there have been a bunch of studies that show a link between higher levels of Klotho naturally and better cognitive function, like memory, thinking clearly, all that stuff.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and not just that, but also a lower risk of some age-related brain diseases. It seems to be pretty important for keeping our brains healthy as we age.
So it's not just living longer, it's living longer with a sharp mind.
Exactly. Health span, not just lifespan. And, Klotho is also linked to better kidney health and less inflammation throughout the body.
Yeah.
It's like this little protein is working overtime.
So we've got a protein that's linked to longer life, better brain health, healthier kidneys, less inflammation. No wonder scientists are so interested in it.
It's a pretty compelling story. And, even before this recent gene therapy study, there was already a lot of excitement around Klotho, specifically around the idea of increasing Klotho levels.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about. So before gene therapy, researchers were already doing things like messing with mouse genes to make them produce more Klotho. What did those early studies show?
Oh, those were pretty wild, those studies. They basically genetically engineered mice to have, like, way more Klotho than normal. And you know what? It worked.
Like, actually worked. They lived longer.
Oh, yeah, like significantly longer.
Yeah.
Male mice with, I think it was like 20 to 30% longer lifespans, something like that. And the female mice, too, although their increase was a little bit less, still it was like almost 20%, which is huge.
That's incredible. So, like, even before messing around with gene therapy, scientists knew that increasing Klotho could, like, legitimately extend lifespan.
It was a pretty big clue that this protein was a key player in the aging process.
So I'm guessing that's when people started thinking, okay, how do we make this happen in humans?
Pretty much. But of course, it's not as simple as, just giving people more Klotho.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask, like, why can't we just, I don't know, like take a Klotho pill or something?
Well, it's complicated. You can't just inject it or take a pill. It's a protein. It's got to get to the right places, do its job, and not cause any weird side effects. Plus, you'd have to keep taking it forever, probably. Gene therapy, though, That's more about, like, giving your body the instructions to make more Klotho on its own.
Right. So that leads us to this new study, this gene therapy study. How does that work exactly? Like, what are they actually doing to these mice?
Okay, so in gene therapy, they use these things called viral vectors, which sounds scary, but they're basically modified viruses that are harmless.
Harmless viruses.
Yeah. They've taken out the part that makes you sick and replaced it with the gene they want to deliver, in this case, the Klotho gene. And these vectors can, like, sneak into cells and give them those new instructions. So they inject these vectors into the mice, and boom, the mice start producing more Klotho.
That's pretty wild. So it's not like changing the mouse's DNA permanently. It's more like giving their cells a software update.
Yeah, exactly. A temporary update, at least in this case.
Okay, so what happened? What did they find when they did this to the mice?
Well, first, the good news, the male mice, they lived a lot longer. Just like in those earlier studies where they had, like, genetically engineered mice with more Klotho.
Okay, so the gene therapy worked, at least in the male mice. But you said good news first. What's the not so good news?
Right, so the female mice, this is where things get tricky. They didn't have the same outcome at all. In fact, they developed some pretty serious side effects. Skin ulcers, rectal bleeding. It was not good.
Wow, that's a big difference. Same treatment, totally opposite outcomes depending on whether you're male or female.
And this is really important. It shows us that there's something going on here with sex-specific differences in aging. Like how males and females age, how their bodies respond to things like this gene therapy. It's clearly not the same.
So it's like the whole one-size-fits-all approach to aging research, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, we're learning that more and more. And this study, it's like a big flashing neon sign saying, hey, we need to pay attention to these sex differences.
Okay, so given that, why isn't Klotho gene therapy already being used in humans? I mean, the male mice did really well, and there's this whole potential for longer life. What's the holdup?
Well, I mean, the female mice are a pretty big red flag, right? We need to understand why those side effects happened and if there's any risk of something similar or maybe totally different happening in humans, men and women both.
Yeah, mice are great for research, but they're not tiny humans.
Exactly. And there are other issues too, like with gene therapy in general, it's still pretty new. And it's tough to get the genes exactly where they need to go to make sure they keep working and to make sure it's all safe in the long run.
It's kind of like you can deliver the package, but you don't know if it'll be opened or if there's like a ticking time bomb inside.
It's a good analogy, and that's why scientists are also looking at other ways to increase Klotho levels, ways that don't involve, like, messing with genes directly.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me, and I'm sure for our listeners too.
Yeah.
What are those other ways? Like, what can people actually do to maybe boost their own Klotho?
Well, it turns out there are some things that seem to, like, naturally turn up the Klotho dial. And the best part is, there are things most of us can do.
Okay, hit me with it.
Number one, exercise. It seems like both aerobic exercise, so things like running, swimming, biking, and resistance training, like lifting weights, can boost Klotho levels.
So hitting the gym, going for a run, it's not just good for your heart and your muscles, it can be good for your Klotho too.
Exactly. Another one is calorie restriction or intermittent fasting. Now, this is still being studied, but it looks like giving your body a little bit of a break from food now and then might encourage it to produce more Klotho.
Interesting. So maybe skipping that late night snack is a good idea for more reasons than one?
Maybe. Now, this one's a bit more preliminary, but there's some research suggesting that certain things in our diet, like polyphenols, might be helpful. These are found in stuff like green tea and coffee.
So my morning coffee habit is actually a health hack.
Potentially.
Yeah.
And, don't forget vitamin D. We know that getting enough vitamin D is important for a bunch of reasons, and it seems like it might play a role in Klotho production too.
So sunshine, or at least taking a vitamin D supplement if you need to, could be another Klotho booster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the research is ongoing, so who knows what else we'll find that can help boost Klotho naturally.
So while the gene therapy stuff is super cool, there are things we can all be doing right now to maybe give our Klotho a little nudge in the right direction.
It's empowering, right? We're not just sitting around waiting for science to figure everything out. We can take some control.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a sec. We've learned a lot about Klotho, its potential for extending lifespan, and the exciting and sometimes concerning findings from this recent gene therapy study. What's the takeaway here? What do we want our listeners to walk away with?
I think the key message is that Klotho is definitely a fascinating and potentially very important piece of the aging puzzle, but it's a complex puzzle, and we're still figuring out how all the pieces fit together.
Especially when it comes to those sex-specific differences we talked about. Like, that's a big deal. And it really highlights the need for more research before we jump into things like gene therapy in humans.
Yeah, there's still a lot of work to do. But it's an exciting time to be following this research. Who knows what breakthroughs are just around the corner?
So for you listening, we're going to leave you with this question to ponder. We've seen how differently male and female mice responded to this Klotho gene therapy. What other fundamental biological differences between the sexes might be influencing how we age, and how could understanding those differences lead to more effective and maybe even personalized approaches to living longer, healthier lives? It's something to think about.